Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Stinging Back, the show that challenges the narrative surrounding online sting operations and exposes the hidden truth behind these so-called child predator stings. You can call me A, and with me today is M.
Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you for being here today, M. And so together we created this show to highlight the voices you don't hear when it comes to these cases. The people who have been targeted, the legal experts who see the flaws in these operations, and the families who are affected by them. Many of you have seen shows like To Catch a Predator or watch vigilante groups online as they claim to be catching dangerous child predators before they go on to harm children. But what if the reality isn't as simple as they make it seem? What if, instead of protecting children, these operations are creating crimes that wouldn't have happened otherwise? That's what we're going to explore today. The title of today's episode is The Truth Behind Online Sting Operations. And before we dive in, I want to share a quote that really speaks to this issue. Justice should be about preventing real harm, not manufacturing crimes that never would have happened. So let's break this down and uncover what's really going on with these sting operations. To start, let's talk about how these online sting operations actually work. The general public assumes that law enforcement is out there catching real predators who are actively seeking out children. But the reality is far different. Instead of catching people who are already committing crimes, officers and decoys actually initiate conversations, often pushing conversations in a direction the target wasn't originally going.
Exactly. What people don't realize is that in many cases, actually all of the cases, there is no real victim, no real child. Law enforcement agencies and vigilante groups create fake profiles posing as someone seeking a man for a consensual encounter. They create or enter adult chat rooms, dating apps, or hookup sites and wait for a man who is clearly looking for adult interaction to initiate the conversation. Once they engage, they then introduce the idea that they are underage, steering the conversation toward illegal activities to justify an arrest.
And once someone takes the bait, whether they were initially interested or not, it doesn't matter. They're labeled as a predator. They're arrested and they're paraded in the media as if they were out hunting for children, when in reality, they were lured into a situation they never would have been in otherwise. So let's talk about the biggest issue with these things: entrapment. M, can you explain what entrapment actually means in the legal sense?
Sure, entrapment happens when law enforcement persuades or coerces someone into committing a crime. As an example, say an acquaintance asks you to help them find some drugs. You don't do drugs, but you might know someone who does. So you
Mhm.
take them to that other acquaintance to get drugs, and then you get charged with dealing drugs. So the key point is that the intent to commit the crime wasn't there before law enforcement got involved. And in many of these sting cases, we see clear examples of officers or decoys leading conversations, introducing illegal topics, and even insisting on meeting in person, sometimes after the suspect tries to back out.
That's right. And this is where things get especially concerning. In many cases, suspects have no prior history of criminal behavior, no history of seeking out minors, and weren't actively looking for illegal encounters. Yet once they respond to an online decoy, sometimes even being misled about the person's age, they're immediately labeled as predators, even though they responded to the profile of an adult or an ad that somebody posted as an adult. They were clearly not reaching out to them because they believed this was a minor. They believed this was an adult. They were misled to believe that.
Exactly. And that's what they, a lot of times, still believe. And the consequences are life altering. People lose their jobs, their families, their reputation, all because of a setup that didn't involve an actual victim. And let's not forget that while law enforcement is spending resources manufacturing these crimes, actual cases of real abuse and exploitation are going uninvestigated.
Did you hear about that quote that there was an organization that put out something that said 99% of cyber tips about children being exploited online are not being investigated, and they truly believe that it is because we have limited resources. This was the organization I believe was called Net Choice, and it was devastating to see that because obviously it's not that there's limited resources. The problem is that there are millions of dollars being wasted on targeting the wrong people online. And
Yeah, they're focusing it all in the wrong direction.
that's just wrong. So that leads us to talking about the evidence of misconduct and corruption in these sting operations. So let's talk about something even more disturbing, the evidence of law enforcement misconduct in these operations. We've seen cases where chat logs were manipulated, where exculpatory evidence was withheld, and where officers outright fabricated evidence to make cases stronger.
Yeah, and it's not just speculation. There are documented cases where messages were edited before being presented in court, where timestamps were altered, and where messages were sent by police decoys were removed to make it seem like the suspect was the one driving the conversation.
I have heard about many of those cases where they flat out omit a whole, like the whole beginning of the conversation that shows that law enforcement or the decoy was leading the conversation towards sex. And then they leave that part out, or they will manipulate the text messages, move them around to create the narrative they need to present to make it look like it was the man was soliciting a minor online. It's,
Right, and some of these conversations go for days and weeks at times.
oh,
And
even
then what's
months.
put into the court, yeah, and then what's given to the court for the jury to see are the last little bits of the conversations where they do talk about hooking up or doing things with the minor, the alleged fake minor.
Exactly. And we have firsthand knowledge and experience of these cases where the chat logs were shown in court with crucial messages missing. These are messages where the suspect stated they weren't interested or they didn't want to meet, or the man clearly questioned the age, not really believing this could be a minor, or or sometimes the man just gives up and then the decoy re-engages him, like taunting him, like, why are you wasting my time? Are we going to do this or not? That's evidence that gets deliberately hidden. And
The
they do that to,
exculpatory evidence.
yes, they do that to secure a conviction.
And it's not just a one-time occurrence. We have proof that this kind of misconduct is widespread all across the country. And the worst part, judges and prosecutors are complicit in ignoring these things because these cases are easy wins for them. So the judge and the prosecution, they all get that notch on their wall saying that they're tough on crime without actually addressing real crimes that involve actual victims.
So they're using this to help their careers. It's not really about protecting children or doing the right thing. It's just about making it look like they're protecting children. And as long as the public believes it and they can make a jury believe it, that's all that matters to them. So the bigger picture is who's really benefiting? If they're not saving or protecting children, then obviously they're doing this because someone's benefiting from this. And we just covered some of that, right? So if these things aren't really about protecting children, then what are they about? Well, the answer lies in the incentives. Vigilante groups make money with getting views and likes, and then they solicit donations from their viewers to supposedly help catch more predators to protect the children online. For law enforcement, these operations bring in funding. They get federal grants, they get state funding, and then they also get money from organizations that claim to fight child exploitation. One of those organizations was Operation Underground Railroad. Remember the whole Tim Ballard story and what that has now turned out to be? They have
Yeah, and
no
then
proof.
these officers, the way they make the money off of these cases is, they've got their salary or they've got their hourly wage, and then they claim that they're working 20 to 40 more hours a week in overtime.
Yes, and so they make a lot of money from this, and a lot of that funding is used to pay their overtime. So, of course, they are creating that overtime to
Right. And it all
justify.
comes from the government. It comes from the grants.
It comes from us, the taxpayer, and the American people who are believing that these sting operations are actually protecting their children online. Well, unless your child is online soliciting random adult male strangers to meet for a sexual hookup, no, these sting operations are not protecting your children because it's what, M? What is this really all about?
It's all about the financial and political game. Agencies justify their budgets by running these high profile stings, getting media attention, and creating the illusion that they're stopping real predators. And meanwhile, they ignore the hard work it takes to investigate an actual abuse case.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the real cases are not getting investigated because it takes actual work and it's difficult to find those real predators who are doing that. And let's be clear, real child exploitation is a horrific crime that deserves serious attention. But by focusing on these manufactured cases, law enforcement is not protecting kids. They're wasting resources on creating criminals instead of stopping the real ones. So, what needs to change? Well, first, there needs to be a full investigation into these things, obviously, especially into the evidence manipulation and entrapment part. People need to start questioning the narrative they're being sold. Just because someone is arrested in one of these operations doesn't mean they were a danger to children, and especially because they were never looking for children to begin with. They were in the right place for what they were looking for. They were looking for a like minded adult to engage in consensual sexual activity, which usually starts off with a sexual conversation because they are online. That's what these communities are about. That's why these sting operations are targeting men from this community because they know that these men are going to provide a sexual conversation to them. And that is the evidence they use against these men to prosecute them. They don't tell
Exactly.
the court, yeah, they don't tell the court or the jury that these men were engaging in sexual conversation prior to them engaging them in a conversation. They don't. They just make it look like the men targeted a minor online to then engage them in a sexual conversation, right? And
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, yeah, they leave out that they were in the place that men look for that kind of interaction.
and what's even more disturbing is that while they are targeting the wrong group, and these are men who use adult hookup platforms, they are intentionally ignoring those who are seeking a minor online because they use profiles or post ads with either an adult age on those or they are clearly in an adult space where you have to claim to be an adult in order to create a profile or post an ad. And a lot of times they even use a specific age of an adult on their profile or their ad. And sometimes they don't use an age at all. The
Well, and then
important part,
the
uh-huh,
pictures they send these men are of
an
either,
adult.
yeah, dispatchers or deputies that are female officers that look 25-ish. So then again, these men are getting pictures of adults and they don't
Well,
believe it when they say, I'm only 14. They just got a
true.
picture of an obviously an adult female.
And even sometimes they will even alter these photos. And some of these guys can recognize this because I spoke to a guy one time who was a dentist that got caught up in one of these. And he said, because of my profession, I am trained to pay attention to detail. He said, I read x-rays every day. So when they sent me an altered photo, he said, it was very obvious to me that that was an altered photo. And who alters a photo? It's typically someone who's older who's trying to make themselves look younger. So
Right.
he truly questioned why this person was claiming to be underage when they were clearly behaving like an adult who behaves on these adult hookup sites. And then they sent him an altered photo. A young person, a true minor, would not feel the need to alter their photo. And I've seen some of these photos, and they erase all face marks, and everybody has face marks. Even an infant will have, like the smile lines and things like that. Well, these photos have no face lines at all. So they've clearly been altered.
Right. It's going
And
to say, it's going to, what is it? My age when I say, yeah, the old Photoshop.
exactly. So it's meant, these, they intentionally create situations to keep the men very confused, to keep them engaged, to make the men play along with this narrative of, I'm a minor, please play along with me and tell me you want to be with me and tell me what you're going to do to me. And of course, they want the men to show up, and many men will play along and will show up because that is the only way you can confirm who this truly is and what is real or not about any of this. That does
Right. And
not
the
mean,
ego challenge.
of course, I have spoken to men that have said, I knew this was someone catfishing me and I wanted to prove that I was right. And then they show up and they get arrested because they were supposedly preying on a child online. And that's not even close to being true. They don't ever present the other side.
Right. And they keep it all out of the court so that the jury doesn't see
Yes, the
how
lawyers will
often
say,
the man expressed he didn't believe him.
yes. And the public thinks, oh, well, if it's entrapment, then, the court would have recognized that as entrapment. That's not true. These men have been denied the entrapment defense. They are straight out told the court will not allow the entrapment defense. And they're denied the entrapment defense. And that's why the majority of the men will just take a plea deal because they are threatened with many years of prison time if they don't just accept a plea deal. And then those that do take these cases to trial end up having to deal with the misrepresentation of the facts, the manipulation of the evidence, even, the fabricated evidence or the omitted exculpatory evidence. And
Exactly.
and so that's why most of these cases are won. And the public is not aware of that. So that's
Right. And
why
the
we're here.
law enforcement prosecution, they'll take it either way, either a plea deal or taking it to court because they know they're going to win the court case. As soon as the jury hears it's a SO hearing, they're going to take the side of the prosecution.
They're
But
biased.
the way it's reported, with there's no real victim. Whether they take the plea or not, it gets reported as there being a real victim. So when it's sent into the ICAC or FBI or DOJ, the report they get says they caught 19 people who
And
who
they say 19 children.
right, and they saved 19 children even though those children are fake.
The children was a police officer. So if the police officer posts as a 15-year-old girl, they document that as there was a 15-year-old girl saved or rescued from, child exploitation or child trafficking or whatever that is. But yes, that is clearly misrepresented, and it's done for funding purposes.
Exactly.
It truly is fraud because they have been lying to the public about this, misleading the public to believe that these sting operations are protecting their children when in reality they are not. And
Right.
millions of our tax dollars have been wasted on this.
Well, that's where everybody needs to wake up. Shows like To Catch a Predator and these viral vigilante stings aren't what they seem. They're entertainment designed to fuel more panic, to fuel more statistics as far as the government is concerned, and not real justice. If we really care about protecting children, we need to focus on actual predators, not manufactured ones.
That's exactly right. And that's why we're here, because the truth needs to be told, because the truth matters. We'll continue to expose these issues. We'll bring forward evidence and fight for real justice.
Now, if you found this episode eye opening, which I hope you do, please share it. The only way to stop these unethical practices is to spread awareness and demand accountability.
So that's all for today's episode of Singing Back. Thank you for listening. stay tuned for more deep dives into the truth behind online sting operations. Until next time, stay informed and question everything.
Everything. Question everything.